What did you dream about last night? Were you one of the lucky ones who had dreams about rainbows and unicorns? Or took a trip to a galaxy far, far away? Or who maybe had an enlightening conversation with a departed loved one? Or were you woken up in the middle of the night by visions of tigers chasing you? Or seeing yourself in your coffin? Or even of being trapped in a dark, unending maze? I don't know this for a fact, but I believe that nearly everyone has had at least one nightmare in their lives, and they can be so unsettling that many vow to never remember another dream of theirs for as long as they live. But I learned early on in my dream studies, through my mentor, Kelly Sullivan Walden, that a nightmare is a terrible thing to waste, that in those scary images are nuggets of gold that can be mined to empower us. Well, Kelly's in the house today, here to talk about the power behind the dreaded nightmare. For those who don't know it, Kelly Sullivan Walden is one of the nation's foremost dream experts. She's analyzed the dreams of thousands, from celebrities to corporate executives, and has written tons of books and oracle cards, including A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste, The Art of Transforming the Tragic into Magic. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Kelly.
Debbie Spector Weissman, it is so dreamy to be back with you. And I do feel like I'm with you. And I've been at your beautiful place, and your actual place where you're living doesn't look that different from this beautiful background behind you. So, so I do feel like
Uh,
I'm virtually and with you
yes,
on metaphysical levels.
yes, and it's all about dreaming your dream life, and I dream of you in my life, so it's all there. It's all there.
Debbie,
But we
Debbie.
are here right now
Yeah.
to talk about nightmares. So I want to get started with this. What makes a nightmare different from your average typical dream?
It was interesting. There was a study done years ago that basically said that most remembered dreams are nightmares, and typically typical like the average person believes that most of their dreams are negative, but that's not true. It's just that nightmares tend to be the ones that we remember because they tend to come in with some kind of an emotional charge, some kind of something that terrifies us and maybe wakes us up. So we remember those dreams. And it's kind of like life, how most of us remember the traumas. We remember the tragic things. We remember the things that didn't go well. I remember, I think it was Madonna that said, she could have a stadium of people clapping and chanting and cheering for her, but there'll be that one person in the audience that has their arms folded that's giving her a dirty look, and that's the one person she remembers. So it's just the way our limbic brain, our survival brain is oriented, that we tend to remember the negative, the scary, the difficult more than we do the positive and the beautiful and the happy. And I think as we evolve, that ratio will flip, but it does tend to be that the nightmares are more often remembered, but it doesn't mean that that's all we're having. We might have 10 happy dreams to every one or every half of a negative dream, but we'll tend to remember the difficult ones. I mean, last night we all have 3 to 9 big dreams every night. Last night, the dream that I remembered was one that was difficult. It was a scary dream. And that was the one that came in so technicolor. So I think those are why they're more easy to remember. Doesn't mean that that's all we're having though.
Yeah. Well, true. It's also like that study about our conscious system is that during the day we dream something or think something like 90,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are negative.
Exactly.
And when we realize that and start paying attention to our thoughts, that ratio goes down. So it's the same with nightmares. When we start paying attention to them, the ratio between scary dreams and good dreams changes also.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think it's important to note that the way that we're wired is very survival based. And thank God we have it. Thank God we have a propensity to focus on the negative because it keeps us here. Our species has survived throughout millennia, whereas many other species die off, but ours has survived. And mostly we could credit it to this function of our dreaming mind and our waking mind to focus on the negative. But I think at this stage in the game, even though there are all kinds of crazy things going on in this world. Most of us, if we're watching and or listening to a show like yours, we're kind of in the thriving zone, not just in the surviving zone. So it behooves us to start to tease apart these things that we're remembering and look for the gold in our nightmares. And this is why I think it's important to not waste a nightmare, to not waste a crisis, because then we stop being afraid of them. And then we start attuning ourselves to the positive, even in a difficult situation. And then I think we develop this underlying mythology or belief that life is on our side, even if it's challenging. So that to me is the ultimate goal, is to train our brain to look for the gold, because then no matter what's going on, we can be in bliss like the monks and like the yogis. It's like every day is a good day.
And wouldn't that be great? That would be great.
Yeah.
But we do live in real life, and for a lot of people, they started remembering their dreams, or the likely case, started remembering nightmares during the pandemic. People
Yeah.
saying they were remembering more dreams than ever, and they were all usually nightmares. Do you think that the nature of these nightmares was different? Or you think it's because it was that collective trauma that caused everybody to have these nightmares?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, and if you think about it, we going through a pandemic, it's I mean, even though it was relatively calm and benign for many of us who are set up to work from home, and we've got all kinds of we're able to order Amazon, we can order takeout, we were able to survive a pandemic pretty gracefully. But there was a genuine threat to our survival. People were dropping like flies every day. I mean, I only lost a couple people that were sort of like several degrees of separation to COVID, but I lost a lot of people in the last few years, and some of it maybe COVID related ish. But so very close and personal. And then on the news, I mean, there's just so many people that did die. So we were in a genuine life and death situation, and our dreams are are part of our survival mechanism, and they are working overtime to help us to adapt so that we can be nimble, we can move through the difficulties. So for example, there was a lot of dreams about, first of all, Dr. Deidre Barrett, God bless her, and all the research that she did at Harvard, collecting thousands and thousands of dreams that were related to the pandemic, and she was able to detect certain themes, and there was a lot of bugs that showed up, and bugs being a symbol for like the bug, the virus. But there was also a lot of chasing dreams, things coming after us. I know for me in my unofficial research, so many people dreamt about hugging somebody, kissing somebody, and then something really bad happening. Or so they were, it was like their dreaming mind was training them to not hug people. We're habituated. Those of us who are relatively healthy, we love to hug. We enjoy being close to one another. Physical touch is really important to our well-being. So we were having to train ourselves on a subconscious level to not do that. Step away from the other body that could contaminate you and kill you. So I think our dreams were really partly due to the pandemic, and then the added benefit of most people not having to get up early in the morning to drive and commute to work. They were able to sleep a little bit longer and thus be able to catch those early morning dreams, unlike the life before the pandemic, where they just simply thought, oh, I'm not dreaming, and they didn't have the time to pay attention to them. But so there's the time element, people being able to have that time to pay attention to dreams, plus going through a pandemic that equaled more people than ever in recorded history paying attention to their dreams.
Did you find yourself having more nightmares during the height of the pandemic?
I think at the height and in the early days of the pandemic, yes. But I don't know about necessarily more than others, but I certainly had a lot of those hugging dreams. I remember having one very specific dream that stands out. So this kind of combined a bunch of things. I was on roller skates. I don't roller skate, like that's something I haven't done in a long time. But I was at a mall which we weren't allowed to go to during the pandemic. And there were all these people I knew at the mall, and I was skating toward them, and I was sort of out of control, and I knew I was going to end up touching somebody. And I woke myself up like, oh my God. So the skates on my feet made me feel ungrounded, out of control, and I was hurtling toward people in public situations where I knew I shouldn't be. So it was that dream that's it still stays with me. The trauma. I mean, that was relative. There was nothing big and scary chasing me or trying to eat me, but it was still alarming, and it I think it served the purpose of having me a big hugger be very mindful in my waking life to not to refrain from hugging.
Yes, well, you being Dr. Dream, you knew exactly how to handle that dream so that it didn't panic you or get you freaked out or wondering why
Mhm.
all of a sudden you're on roller skates when you don't roller skate or anything like
Right.
that. But for somebody who, is not in tune to their dreams and they have a scary dream, uh, let's talk about the solution. We've talked about the problem, so let's talk about the solution. Uh,
Sure.
yeah, okay. So, like I said at the beginning, you have always said that nightmare can be the best thing that's happened to you if you
Yeah.
truly understand and you learn from it.
Yeah.
You've got a formula. You're also Dr. Acronym. You have things where
You're
so,
Dr. Dream Snippet, I'm Dr. Acronym. Nice to meet you.
so do you have an acronym for how to handle your nightmares to survive them and
Do.
fly from them?
I've got more than that, but I'll share 2. And one is directly related to dreams, and then another one is kind of a hybrid. It relates to waking nightmares and sleeping nightmares. So the first one I'll talk about is jet set. So my perspective on this is just how to work with any dream. And the idea behind jet set is that first of all, jets move quickly. We want a dream process to move quickly so that we don't just get bogged down in mired in the details where we just like get become catatonic and go into dreamland prematurely listening to someone's dream. We want it to be snippy, we want it to be fast. Also, we want the process of paying attention to dreams to elevate us ultimately. And that's what's always possible. We want it to take us somewhere that's beyond our ordinary mundane reality to a higher plane, so to speak. So jet set is the perfect acronym for this. So J is for just the facts, ma'am. First of all, just spell out the dream. And if you've got one you want to work on, we can, or I can tease apart my little skating in the mall dream.
Yeah,
What would you like to do?
but we'll do your dream.
Okay, so just the facts. I already did that. I said I was skating out of control towards people, knew I shouldn't be there. So that's the just the facts. Simple, simple, simple. The E is for the emotion in the dream. In the emotion, in my dream, my emotion was like, oh no, it was terror. It was scary. It was a feeling of out of control. The T is for the title, as if your dream were a movie. So I can't remember exactly what I called that one, but we could just say skating out of control in the mall. That's the title. And the purpose of the title, it doesn't always do this, but it often takes the first thought that the dreamer has and gives you a sense of it kind of makes order out of disorder because a dream can sometimes just seem so wild and so crazy. The moment you're asked to give it a title, you begin to start to make sense of it and to kind of zero in on what's most important in the dream.
Tell me about the set.
The set. So I'm hoping that your listeners and or viewers are mapping this process onto themselves. So just to review, J, jet set. J is for just the facts. E is for the emotion or energy of the dream. T is for the title and or subtitle. The S is for the standout symbols. So in my dream, roller skates, mall, and you could say like hug, even though I didn't hug, I was trying to not hug. So those were the 3. I always say at least identify 3 standout symbols and what they mean to you. So earlier I talked a little bit about what those things mean to me. For example, being ungrounded, moving out of my control. A mall actually being a place of choice and shopping. It's public place where people reside. It's a jovial place, and the fact that I'm hurtling toward it and I know I'm not supposed to be So all of these are kind of my interpretations of what these symbols mean. And then the E in Jet Set, the second E is the big one. It's the word enlighten. And this kind of shifts everything. It kind of scrambles the brain because so often with a scary dream, especially a nightmare, the last thing we think of is this dream trying to enlighten us. But the question is, how is this dream trying to enlighten you? In other words, how is it trying to uplift you, educate you, edify you, make you better? In short, how is it trying to enlighten you? And the very first thought I had about this dream is my dream is trying to retrain my brain while I'm in the pandemic. Hopefully, I can retrain it back to being a hugging person after the pandemic. But during, it's trying to show me where I'm ungrounded, where I may be out of control, and how to refrain from hurting myself. So the last T in the formula is take it to the streets. What will you do to physicalize this dream, to bring it into 3D? So from my perspective, it was okay, even if I really want to hug people, I can do a elbow bump or I can give an air hug instead. I can and that's what I went on to do. So that's kind of the simple version of Jet Set. Any questions about that before I talk about Ogle?
No, go ahead.
So in my new book, thank you very much for talking about that, Debbie. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. It comes out in January of 2023. In the book, I talk about a lot of my own personal dark nights of the soul, my muddy moments the places where I learned the greatest lessons and where I feel like the definition of wisdom as opposed to knowledge is something you learn in a book or learn from somebody else that teaches you. Wisdom, I think, is something that we discover on our own based on oftentimes the school of hard knocks. And as somebody who likes to empower people, most of the time up until I wrote this book, I'd mostly been, I want to say, pelting platitudes from the mountaintop, like talking about these are the things that are important to know to make yourself better. But I found that many people would share with me that they learned a lot more from me when I told them about how I came to those pearls of wisdom. And like from the place of being completely out of control and losing my bleep and then finding my way through. And then lo and behold, there's a pearl of wisdom to share. So to not leave out the origin story of the wisdom. So this book is filled with my mud to the mountaintop stories. And in each story, I talk about my Ogle formula, which is basically it's my own personal alchemy formula for how to turn a crisis or a nightmare into something beautiful, from tragic to magic. So it goes a little something like this. Ogle, which is a strange word. I know most people have kind of a negative connotation with Ogle. I developed a really happy association with this word from Rasuli, the artist that has done the artwork for my hero's journey cards and a lot of my other oracle decks.
Incredibly beautiful artwork, I must say.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, and some of them are back here in this little. There's the hero's journey over there, and
Yes.
yeah, a lot of others. Anyway, Rasuli he's a very funny man. Besides being an incredible artist, he's also a great mystic. And he says, I'm not an artist, I am an ogler. I look for the details, the things that most people miss, and I find those things, and I can get turned on by a dust boat. It's a really life is about seeing beyond the surface. And I interpreted that because I'm not an artist of like the visual medium, but I thought I'm kind of an artist, or at least I'd like to be, of the transformational variety. And one way to not transform a tragic situation into magic is to not really look at it, or is to just look at it from the surface and then run and make up our own definitions of it. Or a nightmare, I could say, oh, that's scary. Oh, I don't even want to look at it. Don't even want to remember my dreams. But if we really look at it and shine a bright light on it, we can transform it. So ogling is an important word, I think, and to change that. So O stands for what's offensive. So we can think about anything in our lives that is pressing our buttons, challenging us, or it could be a nightmare that's difficult. What about it is offensive? We have an upcoming election. There's a war going on. There's there's plenty of things to be offended by. So pick one and ask yourself, why is this offending me? What about it is offensive to me? And what is it, how does it make me feel? Like really identify what the yucky feeling is.
So if you were doing that in the space of the nightmare, you would take
Hmm.
one thing from the nightmare itself and then
Yeah,
ask, "Why is that offensive?
right.
Why is that
So
bothering you?"
my dream, for example, of like what was offensive about being out of control? I don't want to be out of control. I want to have some sense of agency over my reality. I don't want to die. I don't want to hurt other people either. So all of these things, and even just COVID itself is offensive. Like, how did this even happen? And I don't, this is, I mean, I like the Disneyland approach to life. I don't want these tragic things to happen. So all of it's kind of like the O is permission to be a victim, permission to be like, wah, 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 poopy diapers, tantrum, don't like it, don't want it. Wah. Then we move to the G. So you got to get all your victimizing out of your system first before you move to the G. The G stands for what's good about it. So, for example, in my dream, my nightmare, what was good about it is my brain was trying to, my subconscious mind, my dreaming mind was trying to retrain a very intrinsic habit of mine to keep me alive. That's what's good about it. And if there's a person, like, let's say with elections, somebody that we're like, oh, I'm so mad at this person, I don't like them. You say, well, what's good about them? Like, what is there any trait in them that is redeemable, or what's even good about the fact that I'm offended? What does this say about me, that I have a moral standard over here and this person seems to be operating over here? So it's important to discover what's good about the awful situation, the tragic situation. And then the L is for the looking glass. So this is a little easier to do when you're dealing with a person that you don't like or that has bothered you or is offending you. Where you look, it's hard to do, but it's easier sort of than in a dream, but I'll show you how to do it. So you look for, how are those qualities also inherent in me, even if just a speck. So if there's somebody in life, and I won't name any names about any particular political figures, but let's just say somebody's a liar. I might say, oh, I would never lie, I would never do such a thing. But I look at myself, have I ever lied, or might I ever lie? Yeah, even a lie of omission, even if it's just a speck compared to what this person's doing. So in my dream about the being out of control, the roller skates, how is this also me? In a dream, it's always important to do as Carl Jung said, to look at every being, every aspect of the dream as an aspect of ourselves. How am I like the marketplace? How am I those roller skates? How am I the one that wants to hug? How am I the one that's like, this, don't hug me? How am I all of these aspects? And how is that all happening in me? It's kind of the bitter pill to swallow, because we like to identify ourselves only with the positive things, but we don't get to grow unless we own that all of those aspects are within us, even if it's just to a tiny, tiny degree. So then we go to the E, and the E. Am I spelling that right? Yes. The E is for elevate. Now that I've looked for what's offensive, what's good about it, how is this an aspect of me? The only person, the only thing in this world I have any control over is me. Everything else, I'm basically out of control. 99.999% of life, I really can't do much about. But in my lane, I can do a lot. In my lane, I can make a huge difference in my world. So, what is my next step to elevate? So, with regards to the roller skates in the mall, my next step to elevate my consciousness is to hug people from afar, to practice loving without harming anybody. Like Marianne Williamson said, I love this. The greatest pain we experience in relationship is not from the love we don't get, but from the love we withhold. So it's like, ooh, how can I still love and not withhold, even if I can't hug people? So it made me have to think about creative ways to do that. So this is one of the ways that we can play with Ogle and to transform our tragic nightmares or our waking life nightmares into magic.
Yeah, that's Brilliant, as usual. I do have a question though, because the one
Yeah.
thing that I found a little bit missing, maybe I thought E would stand for that, would be emotion. You haven't
In
really
Ogle.
in Ogle. So,
In the O, I mean, if we break down the O for what's offensive, that's where we get all of that out. It's like within what's offensive to me. How does this affect me? What am I feeling? What is this like? What's the energy in my body? What's the cortisol doing to me? Am I contracted? Am I tight? So within the O is an exploration of what you might be feeling, the emotion.
okay, I got that. Well, in the introduction, I refer to you as Dr. Kelly Sullivan Walden. Well, for years, you have called yourself Dr. Dream, but now it's actually the doctor moniker is real. So tell us about that.
Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, over talk about not wasting a crisis being a terrible thing to waste. Over the pandemic, I became aware of the new seminary, which is a very it's a spiritual kind of it's a university of that focuses on religion and spirituality, and they're one of the oldest interfaith seminaries in the world. In fact, I think they may be the oldest. They were on the same campus together with the New School in New York City that came about around during the Vietnam era. So it's a very mystical school. And I realized all these years I've not been an academic. And part of it is I've been kind of hands off because I was afraid that academia would kind of dampen my spirit. It would kind of break me in some way. But this school was so amazing. I feel like it actually was wind beneath my wings. It helped me learn so much about other religions, other spiritual paths, and I was able to earn my doctorate. And actually, my dissertation was the book I wrote, A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste. So it supported me in so many ways. And in fact, I'm now we're talking about me becoming part of the faculty, and I'm creating a dream curriculum for the school, the new seminary. So
Uh,
I'm excited about all of that. I can
that
take the quotation marks off of Dr. Dream.
yes, that is so exciting and so perfect. But how can people find out more about you and the book and everything else?
Thank you. Well, all roads lead back to my website, which is kellysullivanwalden.com, or I had the strangest dream.com.
Well, we've been speaking with dream expert, spiritual counselor, and author, Dr. Kelly Sullivan Walden. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. If so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector Weisman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.